Fellas, I'm going to be trying to make the biggest ranked journeyman, or come up with the biggest ranked journeyman in every UFC weight class now. There's a lot of mixed definitions for the term journeyman. In my opinion, or at least what my definition of a journeyman is someone who's skilled enough to be in the top 10, skilled enough to be kind of in the higher level of the UFC, but not skilled enough to beat the top contenders or go anywhere near the belt. So they just kind of end up as a career of providing for other people, or, ended up on other people's records as a win. And I'm going to be going through one in every single weight class. So some of the divisions were really easy to come up with ones, some weren't so, easy. So let me know your thoughts on this. But the first division heavyweight, the journeyman that I've come up with is Sergey Spivak. He's one of those fighters that, listen, I don't hate the guy, I don't really care for the guy, and because nobody cares for the guy, no one just cares. Like, no one cares if he wins or loses. He's just kind of there. That's all he is. He's just there in the rankings. No one's ever really bothered about what rank Sergey Spivak's at or who Sergey Spivak's fighting. He's just there to provide for other people, like he was when he fought Tom Aspinall, like he was when he fought Derek Lewis, like he was when he fought Cyril Gane. Whenever Sergey Spivak fights, for example, when it was Sergey Spivak versus Cyril Gane, it was never can Sergey Spivak beat Cyril Gane. It was always can Cyril Gane beat Sergey Spivak. And I just don't understand how you can be a fan of Sergey Spivak. And I don't mean that in a way to say that the guy's a horrible person and you shouldn't be a fan of him, but what does he provide? He's had a couple fight night main events now. I don't think I've ever heard him say a word. I don't think I've ever seen any form of promotion from him. The only his style isn't that interesting either. He's got a heavy judo, heavy grappling style that can be viewed as interesting because I like the fact that he uses judo really well, but it's not like a highlight reel type of style. And he's just kind of there in the rankings fighting people, and he's a quiet guy. Somewhat fun to watch, but not overly exciting. So for heavyweight, I'm going with Spivak. He's just there to build other people's records, and I don't think anyone really cares about his own personal career. So I've gone with Sergey Spivak for heavyweight. Light heavyweight, I've gone Anthony Smith. Yeah, Anthony Smith, there was once a time when he was doing really well, around the times when he fought John Jones, when he was getting submission wins, and he actually showed that he actually had decent talent to be at the top level of the light heavyweight division. But nowadays, he's kind of just viewed as a meme. I feel like Anthony Smith still being in the UFC is kind of just viewed as a meme. He's picking up L's. Obviously lost to Khalil Roundtree recently, lost to Johnny Walker before that, and his last win was Ryan Spann a couple of months ago, and it wasn't even like a dominant win. It was a close win over Ryan Spann, who he's already beaten before, and he's Ryan Spann is the last two wins on Anthony Smith's record. He's ranked number 10th, and it's just got to the point where it's a bit sad. He's kind of just a gatekeeper to get into the top 10 of the light heavyweight division. Like Anthony Smith, he's also kind of just known for his delusional takes as well. I feel like he's not really known for his fight style because he hasn't got the most interesting fight style. He's got somewhat of a submission threat, and you take that away and he's quite just a sloppy, boring fighter. But yeah, he's kind of just known for his delusional takes. He'll come out with something terrible. He even managed to lose a grappling match to an intruder that intruded into his home. He was like a 150-pound intruder, and the light heavyweight Anthony Smith at the top level of UFC still weren't able to do anything significant to the intruder. So Anthony Smith kind of just viewed as the meme, and he's kind of now just a journeyman for other people in the light heavyweight division. His time's ticking. He's on his way out, and I reckon in a few fights he'll be gone from the UFC. So for light heavyweight, I've gone Anthony Smith. Middleweight, I've gone Marvin Vettori. Now, he's not a journeyman like what's his name, Sergey Spivak, in the sense that no one cares about Marvin Vettori, because he's a funny guy. He's funny on Twitter and stuff. He's funny at press conferences, so it's not like people genuinely don't really care about him as a person. But his career-wise, I just don't think anyone cares about him. He's just there he's a gatekeeper for the top 5. He's the perfect fighter that, if you beat Marvin Vettori, it shows that you're on the top 5 level. If you lose to Marvin Vettori, like Roman Dolidze did at UFC 286, get out of the rankings. Yeah, he's not the most consistent. He lost to Adesanya, lost to Robert Whittaker, lost to, obviously, Jared Cannonier brutally recently as well. He's just not the most consistent. His only legit wins recently, like I said, are Roman Dolidze and Paulo Costa, so he's kind of just there in the rankings. He'll pick up a win every now and then against a guy that's not that great, like I said, against a guy like Costa and Dolidze, and apart from that, it's just him losing. So I'm going to say Marvin Vettori, just there. No one cares about, his career. For example, him and Brendan Allen, they've got a fight booked coming up, him and Allen. No one really cares about what Marvin Vettori is going to do to Allen. The whole talk of the fight is, can a big rising contender in Brendan Allen get past Marvin Vettori? It's never really, can Marvin Vettori beat Brendan Allen, if you know what I mean. He's not the topic of the fight night. Everyone's talking about Allen, so I'm going to say Marvin Vettori at middleweight. He's kind of just there. Welterweight. Now, this is one of the biggest, journeyman in the UFC, and it's Neil Magny. he's so inconsistent, but he's such a random fighter because sometimes he'll come out with these weird finishes like he did against Mike Mallet. Again, he's one of those fighters where he's not the main talk of the fight. For example, Ian Gary versus Neil Magny. It's always, what's next for Ian Gary if he beats Neil Magny. Neil Magny versus Mike Mallet. What's next for Mike Mallet if he's able to get past Neil Magny? He's also really inconsistent. Like he'll get a win and then he'll end up losing badly like he did to Ian Gary, and then he'll pull off a random finish over a guy like Mike Mallet, and he's the perfect guy to be around the top 10 area. I see him as like a top 10 gatekeeper. You beat Neil Magny, welcome to the top 10. You lose to Neil Magny, get back in the gym and get better. That's kind of how I view Neil Magny. Not really got any fans either. I feel like he's, again, not really hated by anyone besides Ian Gary fans because of the story that Ian Gary made up. But apart from that, I don't really see how there's much Neil Magny fans. He's not that much of a fun fighter either. He's kind of quite boring. There's a lot of times in the UFC where I'll have kind of slugfest type of fights where we're just waiting for him to get over with. But overall, Neil Magny, the current journeyman of the welterweight division, no one really cares about who he fights. He's quite boring, but seems like a nice guy at least. And fair play to getting a finish over Mike Mallet, which no one expected. Lightweight, this one was really tough. I've looked in the lightweight rankings and it's really hard because it's such a competitive division. It was so hard to pick out just a journeyman. So I've had to end up on Beneil Dariush. Now, I don't think he's one of these journeymen that are washed and no one cares about, because I'm still going to tune into a Beneil Dariush fight. I mean, are we forgetting that not too long ago he put an absolute beating on Gamrot, who's now close to getting a title shot himself? So I'm not going to sit here and act like Beneil Dariush is, absolutely terrible, but he's not in a great stage in his career. He's just been KO'd in the first round by Oliveira and Arman Tsarukyan, and can I just say, Beneil Dariush, when he watches the promo for Oliveira versus Arman Tsarukyan, he must be horrified. He must hate the promotion for that fight because it's just going to be replays of him getting his head bounced off the canvas by Oliveira and Arman Tsarukyan. But he's coming off 2 first-round knockouts, and he's on the receiving end of both of them. I don't know who's next for him. I think he's probably going to end up fighting people lower down in the rankings, maybe like around the Dan Hooker, Jalin Turner area, where he's just, maybe a Bobby Green as well, where he's just lower down in the rankings. I know Bobby Green's got a fight booked, but yeah, Beneil Dariush, I'm going to say he's kind of just turned into a journeyman. Not a massive journeyman like the other people on this list, because he's not like no one cares about his career. I'm still going to tune into a Beneil Dariush fight, but it's got to the point where instead of him being the main talk of the fight, it's going to be, these other up-and-coming prospects in the lightweight division that are going to be going against Beneil Dariush rather than Beneil Dariush himself. So he'll test the lower-ranked guys, but I've gone Beneil Dariush for lightweight. Featherweight, again, quite a difficult division. I've gone Calvin Kattar. Yeah, again, no one really cares about. He's kind of like, he seems like a nice guy. He's quite an entertaining fighter. I'm going to be honest, whenever he fights, he puts on banger fights. So I'm not saying he's like a Neil Magny where he's quite boring or anything, but I feel like he's one of those fighters that are known more for his losses than his wins. Obviously, he's got the iconic loss to Max Holloway where he got Max Holloway beat the brakes off of him. He got one of the most dominant losses in UFC history against Max Holloway. Obviously, the controversial loss to Arnold Allen and Josh Emmett, and because it was controversial, obviously there's more talk on that than other things. He got a win over Giga Chikadze as well, but again, there was just not much talk about him beating Giga Chikadze. So I'm going to say Calvin Kattar's the journeyman now. I feel like if you beat Calvin Kattar, again, I've said this about 50 times in this video, but you're going to be in the upper end of the featherweight division. You lose to Calvin Kattar, you've still got work to do. Good boxer, overall quite an entertaining fighter as well, but I just don't know any Calvin Kattar fans just because he's just there, floating around the top 5 area. Kind of reminds me a bit like Marvin Vettori, and I know his losses weren't dominant because he did get injured in the Arnold Allen fight and the Josh Emmett one was controversial, but I'm going to say he's the current, if there's any journeyman in the featherweight division right now, it's Calvin Kattar. Bantamweight, I've gone Rob Font. Yeah, he's a journeyman now. He was the perfect journeyman for Adrian Yanez, though. When he fought Adrian Yanez, I think it was, UFC 287, I think it was, the Masvidal card. When he fought Adrian Yanez, he was the perfect journeyman then, because he hadn't won his most recent fights, and Adrian Yanez was an up-and-coming prospect, but still, he was able to do his job and kind of gatekeep the bantamweight division by chucking out Adrian Yanez, by getting that brutal knockout. He's still a dangerous fighter, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying he's terrible, he's still somewhat dangerous. He wasn't like a dominant loss to Davison Figueiredo, but he lost to Figueiredo, obviously lost to Aldo, lost to Marlon Vera, and these are, the top guys of the division, but it's now got to the point where I feel like no one really, he's just there now in the division. It's Rob Font's going to get fights booked, and it's not like he's going to be the main talk of the fight. He's just going to be there on maybe like the prelims of a fight, but he won't be on the prelims of a fight night, but Yeah, he's not going to be on the upper end of fight nights anymore like he was against Davis and Figueiredo. He's still a dangerous fighter. He could easily, take away these prospects like he did with Adrian Yanez, but he's not going to be a guy that we're talking about potentially getting to the title or climbing the rankings. I feel like he's on the end of his career now, or at least he's going to spend the rest of his career in the lower end of the bantamweight division. So I've gone Rob Font for the bantamweight division, and then finally flyweight, I've got Matt Schnell. Yeah. Again, a guy that's not really talked about. I don't think I've ever ran into a Matt Schnell fan before. He's kind of just there in the flyweight division. He helped Royval, he helped Pantoja, Nicolau, he helped all of those on his come up. He's not the most durable fighter. He's quite capable to getting finished. He got knocked out by Pantoja, submitted by Brandon Royval. He's not horrendous though. He's not like a terrible fighter. I think he's well-rounded, but he's not... I wouldn't say he's well-rounded. He's just kind of all right everywhere. Like, he's not insane in any like kind of martial art. He's kind of just well-rounded, but he's not great anywhere. And for that reason, it allows a lot of these prospects, or at least will want prospects in guys like Pantoja to kind of use him on their come-up. And yeah, he's just kind of another guy that hangs around on people's records. He's on the lower end of the rankings in the flyweight division. So I've gone Matt Schnell, helped Royval, basically just a top 10 gatekeeper. If you beat him, welcome to the division. If not, you're out of the division. But yeah, that is my list for the top 10, the top 8 gatekeepers in the UFC in every weight class. Let me know if I missed anyone significant out, and thank you for watching.